Oops, sorry about that. Hit the stop button on that. But essentially, what's going to happen is that yeah, the Taliban, they're definitely going to commit overarching atrocities. They keep saying that they're going to respect women's rights and human rights within Islamic law, and they keep adding that caveat because their brand of Islam um, does allow for women's rights to a certain extent. Women and girls will probably be allowed to go to school uh, up until a certain point, or with this charm offensive that they're doing with the West, they will more than likely, put on this front until it no longer suits their purposes. And so, yeah, it's just it's a horrible situation all around. You see countless civilians and personnel flooding the airport at in Kabul, and so obviously that's a mishandled situation and a humanitarian crisis to say the least. Obviously, the Afghan people know what the Taliban are going to have in store for many of those who helped not just the Americans but uh, our allies as well, the British, the French, the Germans, NATO. And so what will probably more than likely happen with that is that yeah, many of those people probably will be massacred or slaughtered, and those who don't accept the rule will either have to fight or flee the country, which the U.S. is trying to make possible with other countries. Although I don't really see too much more they can really do because um, you know Afghanistan is a landlocked country, and so it's surrounded by somewhat friendly nations to the north in the Central Asian republics. But you also have Afghanistan and you have Pakistan, which aren't particularly uh, the most secure and safest countries in the region. And so you're really going to see, uh, a breakdown of society in Afghanistan. And, you know, all the predictions that the Biden administration were making is that the country could hold out for a few months, and then that assessment was changed to a few weeks, and then ultimately a few days. And so right now, the effort by the U.S. Is a little bit lackluster. They should have been able to get most of the Americans out within uh, a more orderly time frame, but I'm of the belief that it was always going to be messy once we pulled out of Afghanistan because we've been saying that for, the better part of a decade now that we would get out of Afghanistan, and we just haven't. It was the same, some of the similar situation in Iraq when um, the terrorist group known as ISIS came and sort of did a similar thing as the Taliban. They were a little bit more extreme in the notion that they weren't just trying to conquer uh, Iraq, but they also trying to conquer Syria and the Levant and the greater Middle East regions. And so it is heartbreaking to see many of the people and their desperate pleas to escape the country, but they know that they're pretty much done for. That the U.S. and its allies will just basically, you know, lead them to their fate, and hopefully that's not going to be too much of the case. But I feel that that's what's going to happen. The you know, Many people in the media are comparing this to Saigon or something like that, but you really can't compare it. And one of the big reasons why it's similar in the fact that there was other collapse of the government and uh, the native forces fighting the communists as the Afghans were somewhat fighting the Taliban. Uh, it was not similar in the sense that people forget that the U.S. pulled out of South Vietnam in 1975, and Saigon didn't ultimately fall until April of, I believe, 1975. So that was almost 2 years, essentially, of, you know, fighting that the South Vietnamese did before they ultimately fell. Um, the Afghan government essentially fell less than, you know, it essentially fell less than a month. And if you look at Kabul, Kabul fell within a few hours uh, once the Taliban approached the city. So it's not similar in that case. I think you have to really just compare this just to an utter collapse of intelligence, planning. Just if there even was any plan, it doesn't seem like there was. The president gave a press conference this week. He essentially just blamed everyone else for it. He blamed, the president of Afghanistan, the people of Afghanistan for not getting out, other allies for not helping, and it really just comes down to the U.S. government, uh, you know, not making it clear that this was going to be the moment that we pulled out. And I believe that it was always going to be messy because obviously like I said before, many of people didn't think the U.S. was actually going to leave. Even during Trump's tenure, we still had 2,500 troops in Afghanistan, and now you see that we're sending upwards of 6,000 troops back to Afghanistan to secure the airport and getting people who are American citizens and Afghan personnel who helped us during the war out, and visa waiters. But it was just never going to go right either way, and so for all the pundits and people that are saying that, oh, this is the most terrible thing ever, um, it's not really what it's not really what the U.S. promised to do. We promised to leave. We didn't promise to leave in an orderly and protective way. Obviously, some of the flip flops of the Biden administration is kind of weird, but I think it brings up the best tagline of the whole week, um, of Kamala Harris basically having supported the pullout in, I believe, April or May, and now stating that she doesn't want this blank put on her. So you know, I think it is a hard thing. It is a hard sell, but and some of the other videos I'm going to talk a little bit about what uh, how this all happened and what more needs to be done to make sure that this doesn't happen again and where we go from there. So, as always, I know I had cut out in the last video, but hopefully you stay tuned for the next few. So, always remember like, subscribe, and comment, and share if you would like. And don't forget, it's with a Y.